What's the matter? You cold?
Freezing in here. Really? It's crazy. I think we need to make a resolution to get some.
We do that to make sure we stay awake here.
Okay, looks like we're go for lunch.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
Did you say we have lunch or you're ready?
Yeah, we're go for lunch.
Okay. Welcome to the December 9th Henrietta Town Board meeting. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Here.
Councilmember Stafford,
Here.
Councilmember Safranek,
Here.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Here.
Supervisor Schultz.
Here. We'll begin this evening with a silent prayer followed by the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
Mr. Supervisor, fellow town board members, I'd like to make a motion to approve the November 16th, 2020 Town Board Workshop meeting and the November 18th.
So let's do them one at a time.
One at a time,
Yep.
sorry. Okay.
Second.
Any discussion on the workshop minutes? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the November 18th, 2020 Town Board meeting minutes.
Second.
Any discussion on the town board meeting minutes? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor Schultz and fellow board members, I have resolution 24-289-2020. Whereas Lawrence W. Neal has served the town of Henrietta as a member of the planning board from 1998 through 2020. And whereas during those 22 years of service, Mr. Neal has dedicated and been a responsive member of the planning board, adapting to the ever-changing needs of our community and embracing the new planning initiatives such as the green infrastructure. And whereas Mr. Neal has always been well prepared for the meetings, very respectful of the applicants, has offered good suggestions and balanced the needs of our town residents and the developers seeking to do business in Henrietta. Therefore, be it resolved that the town of Henrietta recognizes Lawrence W. Neal's dedicated service to the town of Henrietta and thanks his family for allowing Mr. Neal to provide the countless hours of service to our town. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it, Mr. Neal.
Gotta get a second now.
Second.
Why don't you do it, Rob?
Do once.
Can't shake your hand, but thanks so much for your service. Oh, thank you very much. It's very nice. I appreciate it. It was always a lot of fun, a lot of work.
Larry, could you come up to the mic so we can hear you?
Again, I wanted to thank the board for recognizing my 22 years. And as I was just saying, it was a lot of fun. It was hard work.
Yes.
I'm not sure that all the other board members agreed with me, but I spoke what I thought was right for Henrietta. And I hope whoever is filling my position does the same thing. But thank you very much.
Thank you, Larry. We very much appreciate it. And if you could actually stick around,
Yeah, hang on a
because
second.
we have a second one. This one for Lynn. It's kind of a surprise one.
Thanks for your service.
Thank you,
Thank
Neil.
you for your service, though.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
Larry.
Oh, hang on, we have to call the roll as well.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, good point. See, I was just telling someone, I was just telling Bob, I always forget to do
I
that.
messed it up.
So any further discussion?
Just want to thank Larry for all his work, and you did a great job for our planning board. We'll miss you. Yeah.
And I'm sure Peter's smiling up there right now.
Thank you very much, Larry.
Yes.
Yes.
Hearing no further discussion, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolzner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz and fellow board members, I have resolution number 24308, 2020. Whereas Lynn Neal began working for the Henrietta Public Library in March 1990 and has served faithfully for the past 30 years. And whereas during that time, Lynn began as a page, working her way up the ladder to be named senior library clerk, where she handled civil service and payroll functions as well as the logistics and minutes of hundreds of library board meetings. And whereas Lynn's tenure at the library has been distinguished by unfailing kindness, excellent judgment, and she has been a top trainer as well as a friend to one and all. Therefore, be it resolved that the Henrietta Town Board, on behalf of the Henrietta Public Library and its Board of Trustees, recognizes Lynn Neal's 30 years of service to the town and the legacy she leaves behind, and thanks the Neal family for sharing Lynn's time with the town and our library patrons.
Thank you.
That's
Second.
surprising and well-deserved, I'm going to have to say, because she really did put in her heart and soul into her job.
You
I'm
know,
also
she's
going
a bit
to,
more private, so we figured we'd present it to you.
well, that's great, because had she been invited, she wouldn't have shown up. As it is, she is watching our 2-year-old granddaughter right now, so she would have had an excuse, but
Right.
if you look at the picture that Tina put in her book, you have to look around to see if you can find Lynn,
Okay.
because she's behind everybody. But thank you so much. It was, I'm sure she'll be thrilled.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Larry.
Thanks a
Make
lot.
sure to thank
She
Lynn
was
for us as
sorely
well.
missed at last night's meeting, I can tell you that. We missed her last night. So it was the first meeting she didn't attend, and she was very, very much missed, but we're sure that you're both going to enjoy your retirement and your families, and we appreciate all of your participation in this town.
Thank you very much. It's very nice of you.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolzner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Larry.
Mr. Supervisor, fellow town board members, I have resolution 24-290, 2020. Whereas Craig and Kathy Smith have donated $350 to the town of Henrietta's historian as a contribution toward the purchase of the Sweeney hardware sign, and whereas a check in the amount of $350 was received by the town historian, therefore be it resolved that the Henrietta Town Board acknowledges this donation and thanks Craig and Kathy Smith for their generosity.
Second. Any further discussion? Becky, Kathy, or Craig, they weren't planning on attending, were they?
They're here virtually.
Oh, they're here virtually. All right.
Well, thank you so much to both of you for your generous contribution to our town.
Well,
I
it's
know,
interesting. You mentioned the western town. This is something that's in the eastern area, and it's one of the few things left near that area has been there, well, probably the better part of 100 years. And it was not, I guess it was not put in, it was not originally in a position of any recognition or honor. And this way, at least it gets out and someone can recognize it. And the building's still there.
No, that's great. Yeah, I know Tina was very excited about making the purchase, and she was short in her budget, so she was very excited when you guys were willing to step up and make the donation so that she was able to acquire the sign. So thank you very much. I know it was very important to again, to the town historian, to the historic site, and to the town in general. So thank you again for your generosity.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Mr. Smith.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Tina, I don't know if you're on and want to chime in or not. Putting her on the spot. She's another one who doesn't like to public speak as much. Well, apparently the answer is no. Or
Okay, she is.
she is on. All right.
Thank you very much, Steve. I am very grateful to Craig and Kathy for their donation, and I think that the sign is something that will help all of us remember what Henrietta was like in the early 1900s. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hearing no further discussion, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolzner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. Thank you again to everybody and their contributions to the town. Next up, we have a public presentation from Bergman Associates for basically the progress update and some of the initial plans for the new Henrietta Town Court building. Steve?
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Steve Kushner. I'm a project manager and architect with Bergman. We're very excited to be working with the town on this project. As you probably know, the new town court facility is planned to replace the existing library right across the entry drive here from Town Hall. And so today we wanted to walk through kind of some of the progress, discuss the next steps for our team, and answer any questions that you might have. So far we've had the pleasure of working with kind of the project leadership team, Supervisor Schultz, Craig Eckert, Chris Martin, and Chris Hauser, as well as town staff, including judges and clerks, though they may not have seen all of the plans and imagery that we have to share today. They've provided great insight into the current facility, how it works, how it may not work so well, and taught us about ways that we can improve and focus on functionality first and form to follow. So next slide, please. So these are some images of the existing court facility. It doesn't cover all of the things that I want to discuss here, but really want to talk about some conditions of the existing town court that we sought to reconcile in the plans for the new building. Not so much critique of the space, but opportunities to learn from. So one of the challenges of the facility is the entry experience into it, is knowing where the front door is, how to enter into the space for the public, a separation of spaces between the public, the staff areas, and then any sort of detainees with the sheriff. It's not necessarily a clear path, and it's not always efficient or safe. Hypothetically speaking, somebody might get a speeding ticket in this town and need to find the front door and ended up driving around the back right where the sheriff was. No names. Don't want to mention who that might be. So once you enter into the space, there's a lack of control at the screening area. It's possible that somebody could get through screening without really having to go through the screening machines. Due to distractions, just the nature of the way the space is organized. And that also bleeds into the same lobby, so there's constant traffic kind of moving in and out without an organized fashion. Given the nature of the existing space being converted from its former use, there are columns within the courtroom space that provide obstructions for visibility for the judges to see everything that's going on and maintain control of the courtroom. There's no separation of the jury from the public seating. That's the image in the upper right. Yes, it's tried to be physically distanced from each other, but someone in the public seating could walk right up and touch somebody in the jury space when there are juries for hearings. The image in the kind of center is the back of the judge stand. There are steps up to the chairs, the seating area for the judge and the clerk. It's very possible that they could roll backwards in a chair right down those stairs and there'd be a potential accident. We want to create safety.
There have been a couple saves from clerks who have grabbed judges before they've gone toppling over.
There is a lack of wheelchair accessibility to the witness stand, to the judge's bench. Whether or not we have judges, clerks that may need wheelchair access, we should provide these things in a good facility, especially when we're building new. Oftentimes there's an inefficient layout leading to the clerk and jury areas being used for storage. The records retention room is down across the lobby. As a result of that, there's a nature to not use it as often, to try to use other areas for storage. The jury room, conference room is in the lower right-hand corner. That's duplicates as a storage area right now. I should also mention, I may not have talked about the security enough to bring detainees in to trial. They're coming right through the clerk's area right now. There's not a separate space to hold that function and keep everybody secure. The image on the left is the clerk's area. It's also true of the judge's chambers. There's no natural light in any of these spaces. Quality workspace should have some natural light. The holding room, which is in the middle right, is a room that is just off of the main courtroom area. It's not necessarily a secure space, a durable space. The walls could be damaged. There's carpet on the floors that could be damaged. And it doesn't have much separation from the court. I've heard stories of other courts around the county where there's potentially negative activity that's happening right now or going on in that space. It's right adjacent to the court. There's no physical or sound separation. And then, in general, there's kind of shared spaces for break room, trash collection, and IT all in one space. So trying to separate those functions. Next slide, please. So what we've tried to do is create distinct zones for the public area, the staff area, and the sheriff's secure area, as well as create easily identifiable and secure entries to each of those locations. The public entry will be from the south, the parking lot on the south, which is going to be maintained, centered on the building to promote kind of, the civic nature of the facility. The staff entry will be on the west, directly off of a separate parking lot for judges and staff. And the sheriff's entry will be on the east, off of a dedicated driveway and a quasi sally port covered area to allow for them to bring detainees in without it being visible to the public. The public entry in this case on the south, as mentioned, will lead directly into the screening area. It's not fully defined here, but we've tried to make more efforts to create a dedicated path that's ingress through the screening control area, observed by security in the room directly adjacent to it, and then a dedicated exit path. One of the things that I did notice while I was there is that it seems like people are constantly going in and out. Well, this will be a dedicated path in order for that to happen, and every time you come back in, you'll have to go through screening again. So the three distinct zones to get into how they function a little bit more. The public space then leads into the lobby, a waiting area that's a little bit more generous than the space they have now, a place for people to potentially have more of the noisy phone calls on their phones outside of the courtroom or waiting for somebody who is in the courtroom. There's also on the south wall, there are two dedicated attorney conference rooms so that there's the ability for someone to meet with their attorney in a private setting before going into court. Also public restrooms off of that lobby so that that's not a shared function with the staff or anywhere else. The lobby then leads into the main court. The facility is planned to have 2 courtrooms, one main court that holds 134 seats, and a secondary court, which the use will evolve over time. Right now, it holds about 35 seats, 35 to 37 seats. All the primary functions will happen in the main courtroom. And that will be where any jury trials are held. The small court is not currently planned to have any sort of jury, but it is possible that you could bring in chairs to assemble for that function. Main court is a clear span across the room, so there are no columns coming down within the facility that create those obstructions that we were talking about. It's also on the primary axis of entry, so that it's the first thing that people see. Right now, you kind of come in and move your way to the right. It's trying to organize that entry sequence. We've tried to include some separation for the jury box from the public seating area. We've elevated the witness stand and provided a ramp for wheelchair access. That's something that's being developed right now, along with a lift at the judge's stand so that it is fully back to the wall, so there's no possibility of falling, along with gates that are at the stairs. Both courts have access to staff areas, though the small court will go through kind of this again, a Sally Port nature of a hallway that isolates the various functions. All the spaces will be separated through access control, key fobs, door access control technology. The 2 courts share an exit corridor with the intent of trying to make efficient use of the time in court. That once somebody is through, whether they have to go to the cashier, whether they are just on their way out, that there is not the flow back through disrupting activities for the next trial. They're moving directly into the hallway and out through the lobby. The staff area, as I mentioned, it has a dedicated entry on the west side of the building. One of the keys to the plan that we've done here is we've moved the judges' chambers on the north side and the clerks' areas, which is kind of in the southwest corner, all to the exterior walls. So we're able to get natural light into those spaces. We're working to control that light so it's high windows along the west wall, so it's not direct sun in, and also provides a sense of privacy. We're looking at reflective glass, tinted glass, trying to provide that sense of being able to see out and getting the natural light, but not having people see in and see what the function is happening or who is in the building at a certain time. Records room then is pushed in to the center of the plan. Currently, the records room is on an exterior wall. It has some windows that don't get used by anybody, while the clerk's areas and judges' offices have no natural light. So definitely something we're trying to achieve here. And then there's a shared break room that's large enough for seating, separate trash collection area, and the building system functions are moved into their own separate space. The other benefit here is the blue zone that you see on the east side, the sheriff's area. With the sheriff's office, 2 holding cells, one for men, one for women, and a dedicated restroom facility. So there's a physical separation and a sound separation between that and the courtrooms, so that that is a controlled environment separate from the other functions. That will all be CMU with polished concrete floors, floor drains, epoxy paint, easy to wash, easy to clean. Next slide, please.
I've been waiting for you to use colors. You're west, north. For people watching this, the colors would be helpful as far as explaining the diagram.
I will point out that the image was north up, so.
Yeah, and that's, yeah.
Sorry, should have mentioned that.
No problem.
Then to house this plan that we've been looking at, we have to develop a mass, a form to be part of the neighborhood. It is, as I mentioned, right across the street from Town Hall. So we want to pull some cues from the surrounding buildings to make it, give it a campus feel. When you're coming in the entry drive, you know that you've arrived at the Henrietta Town campus. So we looked at some of the existing buildings and their forms. So the large triangle form on the existing library does have somewhat of an iconic nature to it. It's something, as a person who grew up in Fairport, I still knew Henrietta by the library. Makes me sad that we were built in the same year, and that's now on the outs. So what does that mean for me? Town Hall, we also looked at by looking at some very specific items. So the brick colonnade, as you can actually see in this room, taking that brick element and we're going to utilize it on that facility as well. We're going to make a reference to the arch of the barrel vault roof, the ceiling and roof that we're looking at. And use other materials and colors that are similar. I would say there's probably even a reference to the new sheriff's substation down across the way as well. Next slide, please. We did go through many iterations of different forms to try to come up with what we thought was the right thing for the town court. And so we found a massing to fit the established floor plan. Again, we pulled reference to that iconic triangular element with the entry feature. In this case, we've turned it around 180 degrees. It now faces south, but that allows us to get a larger window in to bring some light through and into the lobby space. That window that we're providing has the arch. The arches on that entry sequence, again, make reference to the arches here on Town Hall. Brick piers, you can see run along, have a reference to these brick piers as well. We'll try to match this brick as closely as possible. And then looking at some of the other materials, we're looking at a panelized stone system for that entry element with a porcelain large format panel above that that we hope is of colors and character that represent the campus. Next slide, please. Now, one of the big features to the massing is to look at clear story glazing for the main court. So when you're within the space, there's high windows all around, elevated above the roof, so that we bring natural light into that space as well. Most court functions are happening at night right now, but that doesn't mean that they aren't going to be happening during the day as we hopefully come out of COVID and go into a more normal schedule. And we want to prepare for that. We would diffuse the light so that it's kind of a filtered light, no direct sunlight, but create a much nicer environment within the main court space. That also allows us to have a much loftier ceiling, a more grand space, and break up the massing a little bit. Next slide, please. Just a view kind of from the entry drive as you'd be coming in. This is the dedicated sheriff's entry on this side, trying to use some elements to create that quasi sally port. So as the sheriff's vehicle can come up against it, people can see who's moving in and out of their vehicles. Also houses the generator enclosure. Next slide, please. So our next steps now are first trying to figure out exactly what the materials and assemblies are of the exterior envelope, as well as the interior, which we'll look at in a second. And then doing our best to figure out options to stay on budget. That's certainly something that we've been concerned with every step of the way, is figuring out a series of options so it's not leading us into a path and then finding out that we're not meeting the budget established for the project. So I mentioned some of these materials, the panelized stone, the porcelain panels, the brick piers, all of that has another version, if you will, so that we're finding the right materials to establish that we are on budget. and that the building is performing the way with all the systems that we wanted to. Next slide, please. At the same time, we're also looking to further develop what the materials and layout is for the interior. So this is a view within the main court, looking at the judge's stand, utilizing some wood as a rich material, focusing on identifying where that well portion is to the seating, putting an emphasis over the judge's stand with the ceiling. We've developed a couple different levels of ceiling types and working with materials there, again, trying to focus on budget. Here you can see the light coming in through those high windows within the space to make it a more inviting environment to work in. One technical item that I'd really like to point out is we have this horizontal band that runs across at the top of the panels. There are acoustic panels there too. That's our HVAC system in that space, bringing in air from the adjacent roof, air handlers on the roof, but we're also trying to utilize that as our speaker system so that it is one datum that runs through the room without being overly noticeable, having things hanging around the room. We're focused on acoustical performance as well, trying to make sure that in this tall space that sound doesn't get lost, that everything is very audible and can be recorded appropriately. So right now we've placed an emphasis on figuring out the main court, and then the small court is a smaller adaptation of that, using similar materials, thoughts, and moves, materials and systems for that. Next slide, please. This is just a shot then of how it might look at night. Now that the clear stories are really not bringing in the natural light, we're using a more rich artificial light to try to mimic that at nighttime. That is our current progress and where we're headed. Can I answer any questions for you?
How many, go ahead. How many square feet total, I think you said?
So we pushed and pulled the plan a little bit to try to get the right function of spaces to work, which puts us at right about 12,000 square feet right now.
And the old library that currently is there, do you know how many square feet that is by any chance?
I believe it's a little bit larger than that.
The old library is 20,000.
20,000, okay.
20,000 was the answer, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Craig.
That's all.
Do any of the justices have any questions?
Yeah, I have one.
Why don't, either come up to this microphone or use the handheld.
Is there a handheld?
Yeah, there's a handheld right there. If it's not on, Craig, the other option is to sit at that table. There's a,
That's fine.
yeah, why don't you sit at the table and use that?
Except I wanted to reference the drawing.
Oh, okay.
Can't see it.
It might be helpful.
You have to push and hold the power button. Is it on?
Is that working?
Yeah.
Okay.
Becky, can you hear Judge Donsky?
I can.
Okay, great.
If you can go back to the first diagram, please, of the,
Floor plan?
yes,
So
Colored floor
okay.
plan.
yes.
I can't.
So the one question I had, and I know the supervisor devoted a lot of his time on this too. We've been going through various versions of this, trying to tweak it to make it better. And so I know everybody spent, particularly the supervisor, a lot of good time on this. But my question is, if there's a proceeding going on in the main courtroom, and I'm doing a proceeding in the small, and I need to get back into the clerk's area or my office,
Yep.
I'm not sure what this is.
Yep.
The blue.
Sure.
Is
So-
that and is that the way I would do it?
Yes. So it's a shared door in this case between where the sheriff would bring someone in and the path from the small court.
Sheriff would bring them in through here, right?
Correct. And then to bring them into
Into the
into the
courtrooms.
court,
Yeah.
they would come in through that door. That's also the door that you would go through to get back to.
Back to the pink area?
Correct. So that's the one area of kind of conflict.
Yes.
The doors themselves will have certain securities on them, and we can provide, glass lights in the doors so you can see into that space before entering.
So Steve, I'll just,
Yeah.
of course, they're both named Steve. All three of us, for that matter. I think we have a quorum of Steves. That space is marked blue because it was felt that while they're bringing them out of the secure area, they wanted a secondary room that was essentially sealed off in case there was they slipped out of people's. So in other words, from there, you would have to fob your way out of that space. That's why it's marked blue.
Oh, that's okay. That's fine that it
Yep.
is. I'm just trying to figure out how without cutting through the main courtroom,
Correct.
how I could get back from the small courtroom to the pink area.
Yeah,
there is a path through
It is
that.
through that room, and like I said, it's marked blue because you have to fob your way through it. One of the things we did want to do, as you know, in the current courtroom, for those who are unaware, the judges' chambers are right off the main courtroom. So if one judge is holding court and another judge wants to do work in their office, they kind of have to sneak through the back of the courtroom, which is really awkward.
That's not ideal.
So now they're off of a hallway. That's what that back pink hallway is. So the judges can easily get in and out, both from the outside, from the clerk's area, from either of the courtrooms without having to go through the other courts.
So I understand what all you Steves are talking about, Mr. Kushner.
Careful being away from your microphone. You can hold it with you, Rob. Yep.
Are we talking about this area here? They come out and go through here?
Correct.
Right?
That's it.
Okay.
Yeah, that blue, like I said, it's marked blue because to get in and out of there, you'll have to fob. So again, if when the sheriff deputy is bringing somebody through and they slip out of his hands, they don't have free access. They would have a chance to essentially reacquire the detainee before they open that door to the court.
It's an escorted area that it wouldn't just be open and free.
Right.
So there's really no way for them to bump into each other as things are being transported?
I mean, there's the potential, as the judge was saying,
Okay.
of needing to go through that space
Right.
at the same time that they're bringing somebody through for trial
Okay.
in the main court.
Gotcha.
But it's not an area where they're held there.
Right,
So in
I
other
see the
words, it's-
separation.
It's just a transport. There was really no way, in other words, the paths had to cross. We
Right.
couldn't create a Mobius courtroom.
So we tried to create the most secure way of doing that possible.
Right.
And it's a good point. There needs to be visibility into that space to know
Right.
if there's somebody in there.
Right.
So that might call for a door that has, a glass window in it so they can look through before they go open it.
Yeah, okay.
So when you're looking at this, basically, the yellow is the court, is open to the
Yellow is a
public.
public area.
Public area.
Blue is for the police, and
Yep.
pink is for private,
Correct.
or their
staff.
section.
Staff.
Staff section.
And
okay.
gray is mechanical.
Okay.
So there can be two courts going at one time. Is that correct?
That's
It's
correct.
feasible that they could both be going at the same time.
So how much space, square footage is in the large courtroom?
Wasn't prepared for that one.
That's all right.
I
You
believe
don't have
we're,
to
I
tell
believe
me
we're
now.
at 2,500 square
About
feet in the main
2,500?
courtroom.
And there's only 35 seats in the other one. That's about what?
Well, there is a lot of duplication of open space in the front with the
Right,
the
okay.
judges. So it's roughly half of that.
Okay.
How much do you know, or maybe one of the judges know, how much court time per week is there?
How much court time per week?
Yes, I mean, if on a normal week, Monday there might, if it's 4 hours or.
I have to
In
go
a
back a
non-COVID
year to
year?
think about normal times, but.
Well, I would say in a normal year, not now.
Yeah, right. Court time. Well, right now, there's scheduled court every night except Friday. So, and depending on what type of calendar you're holding. It could vary. But, 4 hours is certainly not out of certainly a reasonable amount of time.
So would having 2 courts, Judge Donsky, would that cut down on the amount of days you might have to have court?
No, I don't think so, because the second courtroom, like right now, if we have to hold a jury trial or a special kind of a hearing, it's difficult to schedule that because the courtroom is not available. Because somebody is holding court every night, and you don't want to schedule jury trials on Friday night, and certainly not on the weekend. So to have that second courtroom, I don't know how much it's going to get used, but I think it could come in handy. And if you're building a new facility, I think it's wise to have that space.
So the original discussions, Rob, were along the lines of, if I've got the jury duty going on, then when I'm doing the arraignments and hearings and the other stuff that is the typical, that's what's going to be in the side court. While the larger jury trial is going on in the main court. Otherwise, the activity will take place in the main court. So most of the activity will take place in the main court. But I mean, even if you have, for instance, if there's trial going on and an arraignment comes in, they could potentially do the arraignment in the side court while the main activity is going on in the main court. So it gives them a flexibility that they don't have today.
Right.
Because today they'd either have to interrupt the trial schedule to bring that arraignment in, or they'd have to delay the arraignment until after all the current activity is done. So
Gotcha.
it just gives them a lot more flexibility. And again, for the additional space, because all the other stuff is essentially already there, it was a very smart use of space to add the side court in there. That came from the 3 justices. When we first did this, before we brought in the architect, we just sort of spoke to all the justices, all the clerks, said, what are your needs? And I kind of put together an initial drawing, and that came out of that discussion of, how much beneficial it would be to have that side court. And that's what we turned over to Bergman and Associates, and they did a fabulous job with this. And this is the first time I've seen the rendering of the main court. We had some discussion of it, but boy, it came out even nicer looking than I pictured in my head.
I think
You guys have done a
it's
really
been a
good
while
job.
since I've been in other town courts because, as you may know, I'm not supposed to go to them anymore. But all of the more modern ones, the newer ones, all have 2 courtrooms. Or two, if not, or at least a space where a court can be conducted.
Right.
And it just makes sense to do that.
Again, hypothetically speaking, if you were to get speeding tickets all over the place, you could visit all of them. That's
Well, thanks
My
for
thoughts
that.
exactly.
Well, thanks for that advice. I really appreciate it.
Could you tell me in a normal year, how many jury trials are there in a normal year? Obviously, this,
In a normal year?
yes.
5 to 10, maybe?
Okay, thank you.
I mean, we've also showed kind of a jury box of 12 with the understanding that is for jury selection, and the juries that will be used are typically 6.
Right, with an alternate.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
The
of
size of the jury
those,
changes depending on the nature of the trial.
not that it really matters, but of those trials that you have, how many are jury and how many are just judge? I mean, they
Well,
cannot-
there's lots. I mean, right now as the schedule is made, each judge has 1 a month of bench trials, and there could be as many as 5 of those that go on, 5, 6 of those that can go on a bench trial night, non-jury.
Okay,
So those go on all the time.
Right.
And there's lots of them.
okay.
I don't mean.
It looks good, Steve.
I don't mean to hog all the time, and Judge Michelle might want to.
Well, I can't answer to the usual year,
Right.
but I do agree with the bench trials happen every week.
Sue, could you come up to one of the microphones? There's one over here at the table.
What I said was I can't answer to a usual year because nothing has been usual since I've started.
Right.
With that being said, as Judge Donsky said, every week we have one of the judges have just a bench trial night. But board member asked about how many jury trials. And jury trials, I haven't seen one yet, but
Okay.
again, that's the usual year. But if we're doing one night a week for 4 weeks every month, then that should tell you that there could be many in that month. So.
I know I've got 2 jury trials that I haven't been able to schedule since March, so.
And besides trials, there's also hearings that have to be held where, you know, again, a lot of this has to be scheduled overlapping with what we already have going on the bench. So a hearing is similar to a trial, but it's not a trial. But it might only involve 4 people, which would be perfect in the small courtroom.
Gotcha.
Because all you got, and then in a general quick hearing, you're going to have a defendant, the AD, the PD, the judge, and maybe 1 witness, and maybe a sheriff if somebody's come in from custody. So that goes on too on a regular basis.
I'll give you another good example, which would give us a lot of flexibility. A jury trial could be scheduled. Let's say a judge has it's scheduled for a civil night. We all have our civil calendars. A civil proceeding could easily take place in the small courtroom while a jury trial is going on in the big courtroom, and that gives us a lot more flexibility to be able to schedule these things. Because in the civil case, you know, you wouldn't need a prosecutor or a public defender, so that really makes it. You could plug a jury trial in on almost any civil night.
Gotcha.
Whereas now we don't have that capability. I have one other question. I wish I could remember it. We talked about this, and I don't remember how it was resolved, but in that hallway, the public hallway between the 2 courtrooms, since the public has access all the way up to the blue, did we talk about sealing it off up here or putting some kind
It
of
looks like
door
a
there?
door there.
So general public only has the ability to get to the door.
Oh, it's sealed up here, at the bottom.
Correct.
Okay.
It's sealed off at the lobby, correct? That's an exit only essentially.
Just past the entry door into the small court.
Okay.
One thing that the hallway does accommodate, though, is if there's somebody in the small court that needs to use the cashier, there's not a cashier in the small court, and they could go through this hallway back into the court through that side door, which would be unlocked during.
Talking about this door?
Yeah, go through that door, and then instead of turning to go out, they would turn to go to the cashier in the main courtroom.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
And then exit through the corridor.
Okay. But the general public gets stopped just past the entrance to the small court.
Correct.
I knew we discussed that.
And there's a plan that there would be a security camera looking down the hallway that would be monitored at the security office up front. So that if somebody was lingering or trying to hold the door open, they could come and respond and stop that.
Right. We have the ability to alarm doors, again, provide key fob access through different ways so that it's monitored who is going through where.
And I don't know if you want to talk about this right now. I know it came up as an issue regarding the ramp access for the bench. And I know you're thinking of ways to try and resolve that. I just wanted to point out, though, there's some kind of, I'm not sure what, is this a divider? So this, one of these is the judge's seat, the other one's the clerk's seat.
Correct.
And on this divider, there needs to be a lot of access between the clerk and the judge, passing papers, files. So that barrier shouldn't be really high.
Yeah, I don't believe that it really is a barrier.
Okay.
It's more of the graphic that was on there.
Okay.
Yeah, there is more of a barrier between the judge clerk portion and the cashier.
That's fine.
Definitely.
when we were speaking to the three of you, you guys made it pretty clear that your clerk was really integral and has to
Yes.
slide papers back and forth. So there was really no, it's more, again, they're kind of off to the side, but the desk surface, they'd be able to slide stuff back and forth easily.
Perfect.
And then the other thing we talked about is when he was talking about that door. So the idea is on the witness stand side, there's a ramp up to the witness stand in the event that somebody, a witness is in a wheelchair or otherwise needs ramp for mobility access. But then the back behind the witness stand, so there's obviously then a large space for the individual to be able to maneuver their wheelchair, but that also doubles as a space for sidebar. So today, in today's court, sidebar is very difficult. In this one, it will be very easy. And so we're going to carry that railing that separates the judge's bench. So there'll be the bench initially, but then the plan was there's also going to be a railing. So you can come in up the steps there and then close the railing behind you. So you come up the ramp from the witness stand. There'll be a step up into the judge's chamber with essentially a railinged door. So you come in that way. When you want to have a sidebar, they'll come in and around behind there, and you can just turn your chair without fear of falling off the back and have that conversation. It'll be a nice space. There'll be one level up so that you're not, looking down on the top of their heads.
Is this to be behind the witness chair?
Behind the witness chair, yeah.
Yeah, so what's shown in this plan was developed actually with thinking that the entire witness stand was a lift to get from the lowest level up to the highest level. We've since found out that the manufacturer of that lift no longer is making it.
Yes, I heard that.
Yeah. So now we're trying to find a way to provide the ramps, provide the duplication of space, provide the sidebar space, so that the entire stand is going through some.
And so then the last
modification.
thing on that is, so what we talked about is we would bring this whole bench a little bit further forward. So then we would have the wheelchair lift would essentially be behind the clerk's portion of the bench. We want to bring the bench forward so that they're not cramped in there, but that would be the wheelchair lift. You'd probably never use it, right? Unless we had a judge who was mobility impaired.
Yeah, and I can't recall a time when it's happened. That doesn't mean it wouldn't.
Right, but the point is, it's there. Most of the time it would sit unused and it would essentially exit. If you remember, the cashier is at ground level. So that's why we go out that side so that essentially they can come in from behind the cashier, use the lift to get up, but that would only be the judge coming in that way. So in that case, they could either come in the normal entrance and go wheel across the front of the bench, or if they prefer not to do that, they can go down the hallway and come in through the blue area and come in that way. So it offers some variety so that, if we do have a judge who is wheelchair bound, they don't have to set a temporary table up front. They can fully utilize the judge's bench in a manner that doesn't really impede their functionality.
So how
Clerks
would,
as well.
Clerks as well.
right now, as this is set out, how, coming back from the pink area, coming into the courtroom to start court, how does the judge access the bench?
So currently, we're showing a swinging door, which will probably need to be modified to a pocket door.
Back of the witness?
Which is just to the left of the witness
Like
portion.
here?
Yep. So this door right here.
Oh, yes, right, yeah.
And then it will be a ramp up to the witness stand. I'm going to look at if we can find a way to get a ramp and a stair. So both could be used. And then 2 more steps up to.
So through the witness box, the back of the witness box is the way the judge would access the bench.
As the supervisor said, the entire bench is going to be pulled away from the wall a little bit further, so there will be ample space back there.
Okay.
Yeah, this drawing doesn't have that was a more recent change when we found out that manufacturer doesn't exist anymore. And again, the second thing that came out of that meeting was the idea of the separate ingress egress. So that, one of the things, and I'll send some, I saw your initial layout stuff for that. I'll send some feedback. I think it was good. I'd switch it to where the double doors are the exit, because I sort of look at people are more likely to trickle into court, but exit in mass. So I would think the double doors out make more sense, single door in, double door out.
My theoretical experience was that there were a lot of people waiting in line to get through the screening, especially with the COVID protocols, with them being socially distanced, that it was more of a trickle of people leaving, but we can certainly look at that.
Right. Well, right. So I think you'll need a larger queuing area, but in terms of people rushing through the doors, I don't know. I just also think from a fire standpoint, I'd rather have the double on
egress.
The exit
Certainly.
side. So
Yeah, I think the way it works, I mean, court starts at a certain time, so lots of people are showing up at the same time to get in. Going out is different. They're going out more individually.
right.
Interesting.
Yeah, when we get to it, like I said, the issue you've got is the bottleneck is that scanning coming in, whereas there is no bottleneck going out.
Right, and I think the way this is, there seems to be ample space if you're moving all of that forward, you have ample space to do that.
Correct.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions, comments?
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Steve.
I do have a question from anonymous attendee who's asking why there isn't a unisex bathroom in the public area.
Yeah, I was, so is there a non-gendered bathroom or?
We don't currently have one in the plan. We can look at ways of trying to work one in.
The general answer is space is what it really comes down to, but we could take a look to see if we can to accomplish that.
Put a third room, a third restroom?
It would be a third room, yeah.
The other thing that.
You potentially lose 2 stalls when you do that, but we'll take a look at it.
Yeah. Or potentially what some places are moving to is all restrooms being non-gendered and just having more privacy in the restroom.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions, comments?
Got one, but maybe it's too early to be asking it.
What?
Do we have a guesstimate on the cost of this building?
So the budget was under 3 mil.
By $1.
Pardon me?
By
It's good
$1.
by
$1.
$1.
And that's today's dollars, I take it?
It sounds better
Yeah.
to say under 3 mil.
So, yeah, that's in today's dollars. So, again, the plan here is to have the plans far enough along that we can submit for funding. So if a stimulus package comes out that includes municipal funding support for municipal projects, I want to be first in line, right? If that doesn't happen, then later, basically this summer, we then decide, do we want to consider bonding it for the following year? In which case we would have to put a referendum. So these drawings would also be sufficient enough to go out for referendum. Alternatively, we could, hope for a rebirth of the economy. If you look at a typical year when there was actual growth, you were looking at $1 to $1.5 million in what I'll call growth revenue, because we basically, when we do budget, we budget conservatively, which really paid off this year, obviously. We assume that there's going to be no growth. In fact, we take a look at that there might be a little bit of a downturn. And so if there is growth in the economy, that ends up as additional surplus, which we then can either use for projects and or to help keep the taxes flat. And that's why for the past 3 years, the tax levy has been the same each time, because for the last 2 years, we've been able to use some of that surplus to offset any potential increases in taxes. So, we have a number of options, but for all those options, we need plans. What do they call it? 80% set, something like
Roughly.
It's basically, they haven't gone to the point where they figured out where all the ductwork's going to be, but it's far enough along that I can, I have a really good feel for what the cost is, what the, And so that's essentially what we're trying to get to.
Sounds good.
And then obviously, if we decide to do one of those options, and of course, if I could choose, I'd take the stimulus money, that we would then reach out to Bergman and say, okay, finish them, get them to where they're essentially, now we can go out to bid,
Right.
and actually construct off of them. So that's the plan.
Okay, I want to thank the board and the supervisors for all the time and attention put to this project, and I think the plans look really good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Judge. Thank you. for
Good
your
job,
time.
Kushner. Next
I
time,
hope
use
that
the
was-
colors.
I hope that was helpful. I will, everything's a learning experience. So
Very much appreciate it.
Great job.
thank you.
Great. And like I said, I love the rendering of the court. I think that's gonna
That's
be
great.
such a nice addition compared to especially compared to what we have today. Today, it's basically, for those who aren't aware, we basically are renting space in a, essentially a office building. So
We've been renting that space for a long time though,
We
haven't
have.
we?
it's, the space has changed because our original space became part of the Paychex complex. And unfortunately, when that happened, the older space was a little bit, it was more geared towards the court. This was kind of seen as temporary space, and they moved us quickly, and it's not the best space, but it's what we've got.
It's very similar to the other space except larger, from when we were on the.
Right. But you didn't have the fall off the back in the old space though, did you? So anyway, like I said, it's, that's one of the other things that will also help, by the way, is any costs to maintain the new building will be all from the funds that we currently use to rent our current space. So there will be savings there. Potentially enough so that it helps pay off the bond. But we would still have to do
Right.
my understanding of municipal law, which I understand is only a few years old, but we would have to do a referendum to bond, even if it didn't involve a tax increase to pay off the bond. So anytime you take on significant new debt, you have to do a referendum, is my understanding.
Right.
And our town attorney is nodding, so I would say I got it right. Okay, thanks again.
Thank you.
Very much appreciate it. Becky, could you bring up the tax rate update? So this was a surprise addition to the agenda presentation simply because we received the information from the county. So this is the 2021 town tax rate information. Next slide. So the rate, basically when they took into account from the levy, the stuff that had been settled and paid off and pilots, and when everything was factored in, the rate is actually, we were originally looking at $1.22 per thousand. It's actually going to be $1.21 and change. So you can see the number up there. That's a 9% drop from the 2020 rate. So a significant drop in the tax rate. Go ahead, next slide. In addition, since all the numbers are done in terms of the total assessed values for the different districts, the consolidated drainage drops about 8.5%, and the sewer rent rate drops 8.7%. So all those drops are a combination of two things: real growth in the town. So on the town tax rate, it's real growth in the town plus the change in assessed values. On the drainage and sewer rates, there's also, we lowered the amount of the levy. So there's significant savings coming from the town. Unfortunately, those savings are overshadowed by the 13% increase in the fire district's tax levy. Again, because there was a significant increase in assessed values, plus real values, you won't see a 13% increase in the fire district's tax rate, but effectively that's how much additional tax they are collecting. The school tax rate also went down. Interestingly enough, their levy went up 3.8%. There was actually 3.9% growth real growth in the town. So real growth is from new homes, new businesses, expanded businesses, things like that. It's not due to just market changes, which are reassessments. So actually, if you look at that, arguably, as a collective, all the existing property owners are actually paying 0.1% less of school tax this year. So that's a huge credit to Rush Henrietta School District that they've been able to keep the costs down, during COVID. And, like I said, not only is the rate dropping, but effectively they're taxing less. Anytime your increase in tax levy is less than the real growth in the town, the current tax holders are paying less. Anytime that the tax levy increase is greater than that growth, they're paying more. Our levy change was 0. So that means every current tax, property owner is essentially paying 3.9% less. Now, what happens is that's in aggregate. When people's homes get reassessed, it changes the size of the slice of their pie. So those individual property owners, especially if their house hasn't been reassessed in a while, their slice of the pie might get a bit bigger. Other people's get slightly smaller, but as a whole, the existing property owners are paying a total of 3.9% less in taxes. And again, the tax rate itself is dropping by about 9% because of that. So just wanted to give that update since we finally got the official numbers from the county. Any questions, comments?
That's great news. I'm very happy to see that.
Can I get my first resolution?
I think that's you. Steve.
Oh, it's
I
me.
think that's you.
You're not supposed to put me first. Hold on one moment.
Still made donations.
24?
Yeah, no, I know. I have to pull it up.
291.
I didn't have the PDF open. I had the other PDFs open. There we go. Okay. Oh, just got to scroll forward. Fellow board members, I have resolution 24-291, 2020. Whereas PM Star Enterprises LLC has donated $1,100 to the Henrietta Senior Center for an awning structure. And whereas a check in the amount of $1,100 was received by the Senior Center, therefore be it resolved that the Henrietta Town Board acknowledges this donation and thanks PM Star Enterprises for their generosity.
Second.
So for those who are unaware, the Senior Center has been doing a lot of food delivery to seniors during COVID. They've had meals, basically lunches, other meals, and have been working on delivery. It's being done out of the back door, and there's a significant sidewalk that they have to go down. And so the idea is we looked at putting a temporary awning over this sidewalk, but felt, I questioned whether it was really allowed under code since residents can't do that either, but either way, we felt it wouldn't have looked good. So Shelley was able to find PM Star Enterprises who was willing to donate towards that cost. Wow. Plus what they had left in their budget to put a covered awning of similar like you see on the front entrance. Mm-hmm. So that they'll be able to continue to do this even as the weather gets nasty. So this is again, a great big help. And I know I don't know if it was today or yesterday, the days kind of blend. I think it was this morning. There was a resident with business at the clerk's office. And when they saw me, they stopped me and thanked me profusely for, they were thanking Shelley profusely, wanted me to thank Shelley. Basically said what a gem we have in our senior center. Couldn't agree more.
She was
Shelley, her team, all the volunteers who help with that, Raft. There's a huge team that's helping seniors during this crisis. And, you know, again, it's going to be great to have this awning to help them continue that effort. So
Steve, what kind of work does PM Star Enterprise do? Do you know?
I do not know that.
Okay.
If anybody on the call knows that answer.
I didn't have a chance to look. I was going to look them up and I
No.
didn't have a chance to look them up.
Any other questions, comments?
Great job, Shelley, finding that donation. And thanks to the organization also.
Hearing no further discussion, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolzner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor, I have Resolution 24-292, 2020. Whereas Peter and Rachel Burke have donated $938.54 to Tinker Park for a bench in memory of Kay Burke, and whereas a check for the amount of $938.54 was received by the Buildings and Grounds Maintenance Department. Therefore, be it resolved that the Town of Henrietta Town Board acknowledges this donation and thanks Peter and Rachel Burke for their generosity.
Seconded.
Any further discussion? You know, obviously, thanks again. And
That's great.
yeah, it'll be nice to have some additional parks along the path. And again, thanks again for your donation.
Yep.
Anything online? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolzner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz and fellow board members, I have resolution number 24-293, 2020, to authorize bills payable for November 25th, 2020 through today.
Second.
I'll just mention comments that the dollar amount was higher than normal because we had debt service on the library bond was included in this payment.
It's fun paying all that money and not taking it out of my own checking account. But
Any other comments? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolzner,
aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Fellow board members, I have resolution 24-294, 2020 to authorize Megner Engineering, PLLC, to provide professional architectural and structural design services for the town sewer and drainage garage.
Is it Mahar?
It is Mahar.
Mahar?
You would not know from the spelling. I
Right.
stumbled on the same
Megnar, I
thing.
thought.
Chris
Yep.
corrected me when
Mahar,
I
huh?
spoke.
Wow, that's different.
I'll
Mahar.
second that.
Breaking my heart.
Any questions, comments? Go ahead.
The same spelling.
Oh, did you? Yeah. No, I stumbled on it at one of the earlier meetings and Chris corrected me. So it's Mahar Engineering. I will just note that we're working to minimize the impact on the DPW lot because behind where we're looking at for this to go is where they have all the plows so that the trucks can come hook up their plows and pull out. In addition, with the position where we had this originally, there was some turning radius issues because the Vector truck is kind of like an aircraft carrier. It turns very slowly. So we are right now exploring, we're still going to keep, the design would be the same. So we're still moving forward on this design, but we're taking a look at that. What we might do is the current layout plan is that we would knock down the old DPW building that's kind of almost coming down on its own. And we would position this building here, moving it as close to the storage barn for the rec department as possible, therefore preserving most of the space. And then what we would do is put in a smaller, essentially a prefab effectively a really large storage shed, right? 40 by 40. We would lay it out so that it would be expandable in the future, but that way we do just the minimum necessary now to move the parks and the buildings and grounds storage from that old garage into this new one, and then down the road, as funds are available, to expand on that, because today that the bays in that old one are so short they can't fit their trucks in there. They certainly can't fit their trucks in there with plows on them. And so, you know, one of the things that you can't, if you know a snowstorm's coming, you can't preload the back with salt and have it sit outside and potentially, you know, get rained on. And so, whereas if we had this down the road, they could pull into one of the bays. They essentially, during the normal working hours, they could get the truck all ready to run and operate for when the snow comes, because typically the snow comes late at night. They could pull in there, and that way, when the snow flies, they could essentially come in, hop in the truck, and get out and start plowing. So they do that today in the highway department for the vehicles that are inside the main garage, and it greatly increases the response time. It would be great to be able to do that for both, you know, this new structure that we're voting on the resolution. We'll do that for the sewer and drainage, who are responsible for clearing sidewalks. The potential future garage for the buildings and grounds, they're responsible for clearing all of the parking lots and stuff on the town facility. So again, that will be helpful down the road, but we wanted to do it in such a way that we spent the minimum amount of money now, but with the ability to expand it later. So that's what we're taking a look at. If we had kept this at its current location and made it big enough for the plow hitches, we would have lost 13 to 16, maybe up as many as 19 spaces off of the parking lot for the court, and just didn't think that that was a responsible way to go. Even though there'd be potential overflow parking in the parking lots nearby, we just thought the shuffling made a lot more sense. So, any further questions, comments, discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor, fellow town board members, I have Resolution 24-295, 2020, to authorize EC4B Engineering, PC, to provide professional mechanical, electrical, and plumbing design services for the town sewer and drainage garage.
Second. Any further discussion? Essentially, this is obviously related to the previous one. The first is for the architectural structural. This one is for mechanical, electrical, plumbing. Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. Fellow board members have Resolution 24-296, 2020, to authorize the supervisor to sign the intermunicipal agreement with CHS Mobile Integrated Healthcare.
Second.
So again, we negotiated, changed the formula to the way they used to do it is the tax rate for the ambulance would stay flat. And in the days when the housing market was pretty level due to the changes in the, or due to the fallout from the housing bubble bursting, that worked. When we had the significant increase in assessed values due to the just massive demand in the real estate market today, and the short supply of available homes, it would have created a burden for property owners. So we renegotiated and we essentially cap it at the real growth in the town. So whereas the levy is going up some, it's going up equal to or less than the real growth in the town so that there is no additional taxes effectively on the existing property owners.
I'd like to thank our town attorney, Don Young. I had some questions on that and got them answered. I appreciate the help done.
Sure thing.
Any other questions, comments?
Comment is, I'm glad you renegotiated that contract. Thanks. Great job.
Hearing no further comments, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor and fellow town board members, I have resolution 24-297, 2020, to appoint Walter List to the Henrietta Planning Board.
Seconded.
So I'd like to thank everybody who applied. We had a lot of good candidates. This is replacing Larry Neal's seat, as you heard earlier today. Larry has decided not to reapply, so he can enjoy retirement. Walter, very well prepared, interviewed extremely well. We're very excited to have him join the planning board. So congratulations, Walter. And again, thank you to everybody who stepped forward, willing to serve on the planning board. Any further questions or comments?
Welcome aboard, Walt.
Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz and fellow board members, I have resolution number 24-298, 2020, to appoint Timothy Harrington to the Henrietta Zoning Board of Appeals.
Second.
What was his name, Lisa?
Harrington. Timothy.
So again, we had a lot of strong applicants. Tough decision. Tim basically was the individual that the selection committee felt was the best fit for the board. As with the planning board, I've reached out to some of the applicants to ask them if they'd be willing to serve on other boards where we had additional openings, because again, there were a lot of good candidates. So fortunately, most of them have said yes, and so you'll hear some of those names for those who are on the selection committee and the board who heard the feedback from the selection committee and made the decision. You'll hear them on some further appointments tonight, as well as some subsequent appointments at the organizational meeting. So again, thank you to everybody who stepped forward, willing to serve this town. It's encouraging that we have, that many qualified individuals willing to serve. Any further comments?
As a member of the committee, I was very pleased with everyone who applied for the positions. They are very strong candidates.
Agreed. Hearing no further comments, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz and fellow board members, I have resolution 24-299, 2020, to reappoint Robin Cavaglia and R. Bud Snyder, and to appoint Richard Alford to the Henrietta Conservation Board.
Second.
So Richard Alford was actually one of the individuals who had applied for zoning board. One of the things that we're planning on doing, I reached out to Fabian, who served the town for, I think 30 years, many years, and told him we would like to recognize him. He actually asked if we could do the recognition at the Conservation Board in January, so he can essentially celebrate with the people he has served for many years. So we're going to do that. So we'll pass the resolution at the, I just lost the term. What's that?
Organizational?
What's that?
Organizational?
Organizational meeting, thank you.
Okay.
Totally slipped off my brain. So we'll pass the resolution at the organizational meeting, we'll sign it, and anybody who wants to show up at the conservation meeting to thank Fabian for all of his years of service is welcome to. So
That'll be the first one in January.
the first one in January, yeah.
Okay.
Any further comments? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolzner,
I need to abstain from this vote.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye, sorry. I'll just point out that Councilmember Bolzner is related to one of the individuals, which is why she's abstaining.
Probably should have said that.
Yeah,
Sorry about that.
no problem.
Next resolution.
Next resolution, thank you.
Mr. Supervisor, fellow town board members, I have Resolution 24-300, 2020, to name the chairpersons for the planning, zoning, and conservation boards.
Second. So one of the things, similarly, we do want to recognize Doug Levy for his, I think it was 25 years of service to the town. And we'll be again doing that resolution at the organizational meeting. He's asked if we could just send it to him. So we'll be honoring his request and doing that. So again, a lot of people have served many, many years service to the town, and we thank them for all that they do. Any further discussion?
Just like to personally thank Doug for all his years of service, and I served with him for about 9 years, and we'll miss him.
Yeah, I served with him for a few years, and he was extremely helpful, knowledgeable, and I really appreciate all his help as well.
Hearing no further discussion, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolzner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. Fellow board members, I have Resolution 24-301, 2020 to recommend William R. Santos for reappointment to the Monroe County Environmental Management Council.
Second.
So Bill has been serving there, I don't know how many years, certain, this is at least the second time I've nominated him for reappointment. We were approached by the Monroe County Environmental Management Council asking if we would reappoint him. So obviously he's serving well there because they very much wanted him back. Any further discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolzner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor and fellow board members, I have Resolution 24-302, 2020, to adopt the 2021 holiday schedules for the town facilities.
Seconded.
So I'll note that we had asked the union whether they were interested in switching one of the existing holidays for Juneteenth. They were not. They wanted to keep all the current holidays on the schedule, so we will not be recognizing Juneteenth as a town holiday. Doesn't mean we won't celebrate it. We just, the employees won't have the day off. Any further questions, comments, discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolzner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz and fellow board members, I have resolution number 24-303, 2020 to adopt the 2021 board schedules.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolzner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz, I have Resolution 24-304, 2020, to make appropriate budget transfers and adjustments per the 2020 adopted budget.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolzner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor, fellow town board members, I have Resolution 24-305, 2020, to settle litigation against the town for EEOC Case 2.
Second. Any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolzner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. Fellow board members, I have Resolution 24-306 to make the attached employee changes.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolzner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor and fellow board members, I have Resolution 24-307, 2020, to appoint an acting assessor for the town of Henrietta.
Seconded.
So this was a late addition to the agenda. Basically, when we were working on a certiorari case, our lawyers informed us that we wouldn't be able to settle it unless we had an assessor or an acting assessor. Charlene Stephanie has been effectively running the assessor's office without that title. So we approached her about taking on the title, and she is a, probably get the title wrong, but she's essentially a licensed or certified residential appraiser. So she does have some qualifications to do such. The way New York State real property tax law works, she can basically serve for up to 6 months, after which time she either has to get the qualifications to become a town assessor, or obviously if during that time we find and hire an assessor, we could bring someone in. If at the end of that 12 months, we still haven't found someone and she's unwilling to take on that role, then we would have to look at appointing a new acting assessor. So that's kind of where it sits. One of the things that we've seen, assessors are a dying breed. There are just not many people going into it. Sarah always used to talk about when she'd go to those meetings, she felt like a kid. Most of the assessors are up there in years, so this is going to be a problem all across the state. I don't know if the state association for assessors is doing anything about it, trying to recruit new assessors, but it's definitely going to be interesting. It's been a challenge trying to find assessors. And one of the problems that we face is when you then find someone and groom them, somebody else comes and tries to poach them away. That's happened to us. So
When you say tries?
Yeah.
Yeah, more than that.
well, one was, to be fair, one wasn't someone poaching away. One was that an opening occurred in the hometown of our previous assessor, and she wanted to be with her family. So they didn't poach, but she took the open job because it was available. And again, that job was available and open for a while because there's just no candidates to fill it. So, but yeah, it's definitely it's going to be a challenge. We did just get a new applicant today. We haven't had any chance to vet it, to look at it, but and this individual is currently an assessor in the southern tier. So hopefully they'll be willing to move here and we'll have an assessor, but it's been a challenge.
Seems we had someone apply that was an assessor in the southern tier before. Same person or different?
No, that other individual did not want to move or give up all the other smaller towns that they were
Oh,
assessing.
that's right.
So
Now I
that's why
recall.
we did not consider
Okay.
them last time. This is a different individual.
Okay.
We haven't had the chance to reach out to this individual to find out whether they'd be interested in moving up here or not. But they're down in Horsehead, so
Okay.
there's no way they could commute. Now, one of the things if they wanted to find temporary, rental space till they got through the probationary period to know whether they're a good fit
Right.
and whether we're a good fit for them,
Right.
that I have no issue with. But ultimately, we would require that they move into the area when they take on the job full time. So.
Well, I'm very glad Charlene decided to step up and be our acting assessor. Now, if she does this for 6 months, can we extend another 6 months if we don't find anybody?
We can't extend her.
Can't?
Nope.
Okay. I thought I heard 12 months, but maybe that's just a miss.
Well, let's put it this way. I'm not an attorney. My
Gotcha.
reading of real property tax law 314, section 1, made it pretty clear that it's a maximum
6
of
months,
6
is
months.
it?
It
Okay.
does say 6 months right in the law. Yeah,
Okay.
max.
All right.
Any other questions, comments? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolzner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
All right. That concludes our resolutions. Is there any additional public comment, either from the board or from the public? Additional discussion items. It's getting late.
I got my Parks and Rec report.
Okay.
You're gonna.
Hearing no further discussion items, do we have reports? Go ahead, Mike.
From the rec center, registration, excuse me, for the winter programs are now open. And those programs for gymnastics, soccer, baseball skills, tennis lessons, and preschool play group and more. Over at the rec center, they have copies of the bicentennial book, and they're on sale for $25. Families are invited to pick up the holiday kit at the rec center, which includes a letter to Santa form, Santa soup, hot chocolate mix, and 2 snowman patterns. The letters to Santa are due back December 18th. He's going to be real busy, so you have to have him back by December 18th to get a return letter. So some events we got going on is Santa will be at the Senior Center gazebo again this weekend. Reservations to visit Santa are still available for this Sunday. The Red Cross will be holding a blood drive at the Recreation Center on December 12th, 9 to 2. Appointments preferred. Next food drive is December 17th. And it looks like it's full, but I'm sure they need some volunteers. Yeah,
they could use some volunteers. And also if there's anybody who would like to use the potentially receive food from the distribution, but was unable to sign up. Typically, if you show up around 11 to 11:30, by 11:30, they will know how many. Sometimes the food companies give them extra food, and there's also almost always some no-shows. So they'll be able to calculate how much food they can give away, and typically by 11:30, they'll start to give it away to individuals who have not registered. They want to make sure they don't, that anybody who signed up has an opportunity to get it, but usually by 11:30, they can start to tell. So.
The 15th annual Martin Luther King Jr. celebration will be held virtually this year on Thursday, January 14th. And then finally,
actually, before you go on to the finally, to help find access and communicate for the MLK celebration, we created a link on our webpage. If you just go to henrietta.org/MLK, there'll be the information there, including the connection. So the poster, there's a connection for the MLK scholarship. application. And then as we get the link for the virtual celebration, we'll connect it on there. This celebration has been a tradition, started years ago, and it's primarily handled by the Interracial Clergy Council. I get that right,
Correct.
Rob?
Correct.
And the towns, the Rush Henrietta School District, the towns of Henrietta and Rush. So it's been a great program they've been doing for years. Started, I believe, under Supervisor Udelson. So, you know, like I said, to make it easier to find stuff, we'll have that link on there. So again, that's henrietta.org/MLK.
I'll just add that I'm glad you guys put it on the website because I had heard no one had applied for that scholarship yet. It's a $500 scholarship, and I hope someone applies for it.
Yeah, I was going to mention later, fortunately, there's something in there on the back cover for that, as well as the information about the scholarship in the town newsletter. Unfortunately, due to the increase in COVID and our printers being in an orange zone, the production took longer than it otherwise should have. So the newsletter went to the post office on Monday instead of last week. It says the deadline, I think, was today. It was yesterday or today.
Yes.
I assume they're extending it.
Yes.
So again, we'll put on our website once we have what that new extension date is. We'll put that on the MLK page. But until then, if you go there, fill out the application. We encourage you to do that soon because, again, it's a scholarship available to, I believe it's to Rush Henrietta students.
Just the students of Rush Henrietta, our high school. Yep.
Okay, and finally, Christmas tree recycling will begin on December 26th and go through, continue through January 31st, 2021. There'll be a touchless drop-off area behind the barn at Tinker Park. If you need assistance, you can call 359-7044. That's all.
Great, thank you, Mike.
Yep.
Other reports?
Library Board, the library is going to have a public hearing on January 12th at 5:30 on their internet policy. It's a requirement that they have to do it this year. So if anybody wants to pay attention to that. We did honor Lynn Neal tonight for 30 plus years at the library. And we also talked about Doug Roche. He was on the board for 5 years and served as a treasurer for the library. And he actually decided to take a little bit of a break. So the library board really appreciated his help and assistance. And Adrian said that books being checked out are at an all-time high right now, which makes her really excited.
Anything?
No.
Rob?
I'd just like to thank the Parks and Rec for the Santa program. Make sure you sign up to go see Santa Saturday and Sunday of this weekend.
I will point out Rob was as this poem goes, a right jolly old elf. Last weekend, there were a lot of people very appreciative of his services, and I will be there Sunday. So I've been working on it all year. Get in shape, shall we say, to be Santa. So thank you, Rob, for
Very fun,
volunteering.
very fun.
And like I said, the newsletter should be hitting mailboxes very shortly. We'll also put an electronic version up on the website. I have to generate that for Andrew. Again, it's got information in there about the MLK celebration. It also puts out a call for volunteers, both for the ambulance service and the fire district. Speaking of which, congratulations to Joe Martin on reappointment as a fire commissioner. That vote happened yesterday. Of course, there was a notice in the newsletter letting people know that they should go vote. A little late now, but again, thank you for his service and all that the fire district does. So, anything else?
Nope.
Hearing none, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Seconded.
Hearing no objection, meeting adjourned.